It began on a night when I should have slept, but could not. The air was too heavy, the silence too sharp. Every candle in the room guttered low, as though the walls themselves wished not to witness what I was about to do. I remember my hand trembling above the parchment. The contract lay before me, written in ink darker than blood, the letters shifting faintly as though alive. A seal of wax bore the sigil of Nessus, the lowest of the 9 hells. My name waited in a blank line, hungry for ink. The devil sat across from me, smiling with patience that felt older than stone. His form was handsome, almost gentle, no horns, no claws, no fire. Only eyes that gleamed too bright, as if dawn had broken inside them and refused to dim. He spoke softly, as one might coax a child to sleep. "You want what the world denies you," he whispered. "Power, justice, freedom. Whatever word you choose, it is all the same. You crave what others hoard. Sign, and I will give it." I told myself it was only ink, only paper, only words. But in the 9 hells, words are chains. I dipped the quill. The parchment sighed as I wrote. And in that moment, something unseen passed from me into him. A warmth drawn out like breath on cold glass. My soul tilted, and I knew the oath was sealed. The devil wasted no time. He pressed his hand to mine, warm, human, yet impossibly strong, and in my veins something bloomed. A heat, a clarity, a power. The room seemed brighter, colours sharper, my body stronger. My thoughts moved like lightning. I could feel the arcane patterns of spells I had never studied, as though they had always been mine. "There," he said, withdrawing his hand, smiling still. "You are more now than you were before, and less too, but you will not notice the loss, not yet." The contract vanished in a whisper of ash. Only the memory of my name written upon it remained. In those first days, I felt exalted. My enemies fell before me, shocked at the strength in my hand, the fire in my voice. Doors opened that had once been barred. Coin flowed, friends gathered, fear bowed low. And each night I felt the devil's presence in the corner of the room, watching with patient satisfaction, not always visible, not always speaking, but always there, like a shadow cast by a flame I could not extinguish. I told myself it was worth it, that I could endure his gaze, his silence, his whispers, that the power he gave was mine now, no matter the cost. But deep within, a quiet thought stirred. What if I stopped obeying? What if I broke the oath? The contract was clear. Every command of his must be followed. Every request honoured. But what is the worth of freedom if chained? What is the worth of strength if owned? These questions haunted me, even as I wielded my new power. They grew louder than his whispers, louder than my victories, until at last I knew. A day would come when I would test the chain, when I would pull against it, when I would break it, and in that knowledge, even before the act, I felt the first crack in my fate. I did not know then what breaking an oath to a devil truly meant. I knew only the promise he gave, power for obedience, strength for loyalty. I did not yet see the other half, damnation for betrayal, ruin for disobedience. But the hells are patient, they wait, and when a mortal's will falters, when pride dares to rise against the pact, the punishment does not come like thunder. It comes like dawn, inevitable, unstoppable, bathing all in its light. Even now, I remember the silence of that first night after signing, how the world felt both brighter and darker, how the candles burned low, but I did not need their light, How I lay in bed and whispered, half in awe, half in dread, "What have I done?" The answer was already written. I swore an oath to a devil, and I broke it. This is what happens. The morning after I signed, I woke before the sun. Not because of habit, I had never been a man of discipline, but because sleep itself seemed unnecessary. My body thrummed with strength, my thoughts rang clear, and the world seemed sharper than it had ever been. It was in the little things I noticed it first. The weight of the bucket of water I carried up from the well, once a strain, felt no heavier than a book. The words on the page of a spellbook, once meaningless symbols, seemed to shift and order themselves as though I had studied them for years. My tongue formed syllables of the arcane with perfect precision. My fingers moved with strange familiarity, as though tracing patterns I had always known. When I spoke the first cantrip, fire leapt from my palm. Not a weak flicker, not a candle's flame, but a clean ribbon of heat that curled upward, steady and controlled. It did not sputter, did not strain, it obeyed. The devil had kept his promise. For days I tested the gifts he gave me. Some were subtle, words that carried more weight than before, doors opening when I spoke, coin flowing into my hand as though the world were suddenly eager to reward me. Other gifts were undeniable, spells at my command, strength in my limbs, clarity in my mind. I healed wounds with a touch. I bent shadows into shapes that obeyed me. I whispered to merchants, and they lowered their prices without knowing why. I raised my voice in a tavern, and every head turned to listen. It was intoxicating, and yet intoxicants have a cost. At first I thought myself clever. I believed I could take the gifts and use them without paying the full price. I obeyed the devil's commands when they came small things. At first, carry this token into the city. Whisper these words to a magistrate. Lend coin to this merchant, but only under my terms. None of it seemed wicked. None of it seemed damning. They were tasks of influence, not slaughter, nudges in the weave of the world. The devil asked for so little and gave so much, but each time I felt the chain tighten. It was not pain, not yet. It was subtle, a heaviness in the chest when I hesitated, a whisper of discomfort if I delayed. The sense of being watched, always, from the corner of the room, as if the ink of my name still glowed faintly upon the contract, tethered to his gaze. And yet, I revelled. I strode into places where once I had been ignored, and men listened. I entered taverns where once I had been overlooked, and women smiled. I cast spells with a flick of my hand, and children gasped in awe. The world bent, just slightly, toward me. It is a dangerous thing to be ordinary, and then extraordinary. One forgets quickly the weight of humility. I began to look at others, not as companions, but as pawns. I saw their weaknesses, their fears, their hungers, and I knew I could pull their strings as easily as plucking notes from a harp. It thrilled me, even as it chilled me, for I saw, reflected in their eyes, something of the devil's smile. But with power comes corruption, and corruption seeps slow. I began to dream of fire, not warm fire, not hearth or candle, but endless fields of flame. The dreams were not nightmares. I did not wake screaming. Instead, I woke calm, almost soothed, as though the fire were familiar, even welcoming. I began to notice the scent of sulphur in moments of triumph. When a rival fell, when a crowd cheered, when I spoke, and the world obeyed, there it was, faint and acrid, curling into my nostrils like smoke from an unseen flame. I began to hear whispers, when I stood alone. Words I could not quite make out, but always urging, always pressing, more, more, more. And worst of all, I began to believe them. The devil appeared to me rarely. He was not a constant companion, not an ever-present ghost. But when he came, it was always at night, when the candles had guttered low and silence weighed heavy. He would stand in the corner, half in shadow, half in light, and smile. "You are thriving," he would murmur. "See how easily the world bends when you reach for it. Was it not worth the ink? Was it not worth the price?" I would nod, for in those moments, drunk on my own strength, it seemed true. And yet, even then, a small voice within me whispered, "At what cost?" I tried to ignore it. When villagers whispered prayers of thanks as I healed their sick, I ignored the chill that crept into my spine. When merchants bowed too low, offering goods at prices far too generous, I ignored the faint glow in their eyes, as though something not of them looked out. When I cast spells with ease I had never earned, I ignored the emptiness that followed, a hollow ache as though something had been taken from me. I told myself it was nothing, that I was stronger, better, freer than I had ever been. But the chain was tightening, and then came the first true command. Not a whisper to a magistrate, not a coin placed in a merchant's hand, not a charm spoken over a crowd. This time, the devil asked for blood. "A rival stands in your path," he whispered in the night, his eyes gleaming. "He mocks you, resists you, threatens to unmake what you have built. Remove him." I remember the stillness of that moment, the weight of the words, the way my heart clenched. To obey would be easy. I had the strength, I had the spells, I had the will. But to obey would be to surrender completely, to prove that my soul was not only chained, but owned. I lay awake until dawn, staring at the ceiling, listening to my own breath. And for the first time since signing, I wondered, what if I refused? The thought was dangerous, more dangerous than any spell, more dangerous than any blade. For devils do not grant gifts freely, they grant them to own, and ownership cannot be denied without consequence. Still, the thought lingered. Still, it grew. Still, it whispered, what if? Looking back, I see now that the breaking of the oath did not begin in one moment of rebellion. It began here, in doubt. For doubt is the first crack in any chain. And when doubt is given breath, it grows. It is a strange thing to live with both gratitude and dread inside the same chest. To wake each morning stronger, sharper, more capable than before, yet to feel the quiet tremor of fear behind every heartbeat. Gratitude for the gifts, dread for the giver. At first, I tried to silence it. Doubt is dangerous, I knew this. To question the contract was to feel the devil's gaze turn sharper, his smile thin into something less forgiving. And yet, the questions came anyway, like water dripping through stone, unstoppable in their persistence. If I am so strong, why must I still obey? If this power is mine, why does he still hold the chain? If dawn always comes, why do I wake to whispers in the dark? I began to see the bargain differently. What had once felt like liberation now seemed another form of servitude. The devil had not freed me, he had merely gilded the cage. And like a bird dazzled by sunlight, I had mistaken the glitter for freedom. It was in small moments the cracks widened. I remember standing in a market, speaking to a merchant who once sneered at me but now bowed with trembling hands. As I walked away, coins heavier in my purse, I felt no triumph. Instead, I felt the sulphur again sharp, acrid, curling in my nostrils like unseen smoke. I remember casting a spell to heal a wounded child. The wound closed, the mother wept, the crowd whispered blessings. But as the boy rose, I saw a flicker in his eyes, not gratitude, but fear. He clutched his mother's hand and looked at me as though I were not saviour, but monster. And I remember, most of all, the silence in my own soul. Once, when I prayed in my younger years, fumbling words toward gods I barely understood, I felt something stir in return, a warmth, a whisper, a reassurance. Now, when I prayed, I felt only echo. The devil had crowded out all other voices. The commands grew harsher. Whisper this lie to the magistrate. Place this token upon the altar of another god. Convince this family to abandon their home, for their land is wanted. Each act chipped at me. Each obedience weighed heavier than the last. I told myself it was only temporary, that I could endure, that I would one day find a way to be free. But in truth, I was already rebelling, if not in deed, then in heart. And devils know hearts. The first warning came in a dream. I walked a narrow road at dusk, the horizon burning crimson. Ahead stood a figure, not the devil I knew, but something larger, cloaked in shadow, its eyes two coals burning in the dark. "Do not stray," it whispered. Its voice was the grinding of chains. "Do not test what cannot be broken. Do not test what cannot be broken." I woke with my throat dry, the taste of iron in my mouth. My hand trembled. I told myself it was only a dream. But when I rose, the contract's seal was branded faintly upon my skin, glowing red as though fire smouldered beneath. That was when I began to test the edges. Small things, at first, delays in obedience, half-hearted gestures, a lie whispered with hesitation instead of conviction. And each time, I felt it, the pull of the chain, invisible but real. My chest grew heavy, my breath shortened. Whispers curled in my ear. "Do not falter, do not fail." But I did falter. I did fail. And with each failure, the whispers grew louder. There were moments, though, when defiance felt almost sweet. I remember standing on a hill at dawn, watching the sun rise. For a moment, I pretended it was mine alone, untouched by devils or contracts. I let the warmth soak my skin and whispered, "You cannot own this." For a heartbeat, I felt free. But freedom is fragile. And as the sun climbed higher, the shadow at my feet stretched long, twisted, and, for an instant, I thought I saw horns upon it. My companions, those who travelled with me in those days, began to notice. "You seem distant," one said. "You never laugh anymore," said another. And one, braver than the rest, whispered, "There is something wrong in your eyes." I dismissed them with smiles, with half-truths, but inside I knew they were right. The gifts were changing me, not only my strength, my spells, my presence, but my soul. The man I had been before the contract was fading, piece by piece. And so, the question grew louder, what if I broke it? To break a pact with a devil is not like breaking a promise to a friend, nor even betraying a king. It is breaking a law older than time, a covenant etched not only in words, but in the bones of the 9 hells. Devils are born of order, of contracts, of chains. To defy them is to strike at the essence of what they are, and they do not forgive. I knew this. I had heard the tales whispered in taverns, carved in temple walls. Oath-breakers hunted across plains, dragged screaming into Nessus, their souls bound in chains for eternity. Even their names erased from memory, as though they had never lived. I knew all this, and yet the thought did not leave me. Perhaps it was pride, perhaps desperation, perhaps the last spark of freedom still smouldering within me. Whatever it was, it whispered louder than fear. Break it, break the chain. The devil visited me again one night. He sat in the corner, smiling as always, his eyes gleaming like coals. You hesitate, he said softly. I feel it in you. You are restless. Speak. I could not. My throat closed. My words died. To confess my thoughts was to invite his wrath. To hide them was to invite suspicion. So I sat in silence, staring at him as he stared at me. At last he rose. He walked to the door, his hand resting on the frame. Remember this, he whispered. Every gift has a price. Every oath, a chain. Break it, and the chain will break you. And then he was gone. I lay awake until dawn again, staring at the ceiling, the words echoing. Every gift has a price. Every oath, a chain. Break it, and the chain will break you. And still, despite the warning, despite the dread, despite the certainty of doom, the thought burned within me like a secret flame. I will break it. It happened quietly. No thunder, no fire, no shattering of walls. When mortals speak of rebellion against the hells, they imagine spectacle horns blaring, chains rattling, flames consuming. But in truth, breaking an oath begins in silence. It begins in the moment a command is given, and you choose not to obey. The order had come days earlier. A name whispered in the stillness of night, a rival inconvenient to my patron's designs. End him. The devil's voice was clear as iron striking stone. There was no ambiguity, no space for mercy. To kill the man was to fulfill the contract. To refuse was to betray it. For days I carried the weight of the command. I watched the rival from afar, a man of no great cruelty, no great virtue, simply a man. He bought bread in the market, walked the streets with his daughter, knelt at temple doors. His existence was no threat to me, save that the devil decreed it so. And in that I saw the truth. It had never been about justice, nor vengeance, nor necessity. It was about obedience. The contract was not forged to give me power. It was forged to take mine away. The night came when I followed him into a narrow street, the command burning in my veins. My hand glowed with prepared magic. My heart thundered with dread. One word, one gesture, and his life would be ash. But as I raised my hand, the world held its breath. The moon hung low, the street silent, the rival unaware. My spell flared, waiting. And I chose. I let the fire die in my palm. I turned away. The silence that followed was heavier than sound. It pressed against my chest, my lungs, my very bones. I felt it before I heard it. The snap of a chain, not in the world, but inside me. Somewhere in the hells, parchment burned. My name writhed. The contract shuddered. And in the shadows, I felt him watching. The devil appeared not with fire, but with quiet. His form emerged from the corner of the street, as though he had been standing there all along. His eyes gleamed, not with anger, but with something colder, disappointment. You hesitate, he said, his voice soft as silk. You falter. You break. I tried to speak, but my throat was dry. My hand shook. Do you know what you have done? He whispered. His smile was gone now, replaced by a stillness sharper than any blade. Do you know what breaking an oath means? I could only whisper, yes. The devil stepped closer, his presence pressing against me like a storm. Then understand this. Your gifts are mine, not yours. Your power, your strength, your influence, all given, all reclaimable. You thought them yours to keep? Fool. They return to me, piece by piece, until nothing remains but the echo of your defiance. He raised a hand, and I felt it the first unravelling. The warmth in my veins cooled, the clarity in my thoughts dulled. My tongue, once silver, felt heavy in my mouth. Spells I had spoken with ease fled from memory, like birds from fire. It was not all at once. He did not strip me bare in a single stroke. That would have been mercy. Instead, it was slow. Piece by piece, day by day, the gifts began to rot. This was the first punishment. Not pain, not torment, but loss. But worse than the loss was the presence. For the devil did not leave. He lingered, always just beyond sight. In mirrors, I glimpsed his eyes watching. In dreams, I heard his laughter. In crowded rooms, I felt his hand on my shoulder. He did not rage. He did not strike. He only waited, smiling faintly, as if the true punishment was still to come, and deep inside, I knew it was. The days after the breaking were heavy with dread. Each moment felt stretched, thin, as though time itself had become fragile. I woke each morning not knowing which gift would be gone, which strength would fade, which shadow would whisper. I tried to live as before, but all was different. My steps were slower, my words carried less weight. The world, once bending toward me, now seemed indifferent, even hostile, and in every failure I felt his gaze. Yet part of me, a small, trembling part, felt something else. Relief. For the first time since signing, I had chosen freely. I had defied him. I had said, if only in silence, you do not own me. That defiance burned brighter than the gifts ever had. It was fragile, it was doomed, but it was mine. Still, relief is fleeting. The hells are patient, and breaking an oath is not an end. It is a beginning of punishment, of pursuit, of inevitable reckoning. The first cracks had widened into a break. The chain had snapped, and now the weight of hell would fall. I did not know how soon. I did not know in what form, but I knew with a certainty colder than ice. The devil would not forgive. The hells would not forget. And I, Oathbreaker, had begun a descent from which there would be no return. Breaking the oath was not like stepping through a door. It was more like turning slowly, realizing only after several paces that the path behind had vanished, and the air itself no longer welcomed me. The first consequence was silence. Where once the devil whispered commands, there was now absence. It might have felt like freedom, and in some ways it did, but it was the kind of freedom that unsettles rather than soothes. The silence of a forest where no birds sing. The silence of a room where someone has just left, but their presence still lingers. And in that silence, I heard other things. At night, dreams grew heavier. I dreamed of doors that would not open, no matter how I pulled, of voices calling from behind them, desperate, pleading but muffled, unreachable. I dreamed of rivers, black and slow, carrying countless bodies downstream, their eyes open, their mouths silent. I dreamed of fields of ash, where roses once bloomed, the petals falling in endless spirals. When I woke, the air tasted of sulphur. My hands trembled, though I could not say why. The second consequence was loss. Power had once flowed easily, fire at a gesture, charm in a word, clarity in thought. Now it faltered. Spells sputtered, flames dying before they left my palm. Words stumbled in my throat, their silver tarnished. Strength drained from my body, slow but relentless, like sand leaking from an hourglass. It was not immediate. That was the cruelty of it. Each day I woke wondering, what would be gone today? Sometimes nothing, sometimes a little, sometimes more. The uncertainty gnawed more than the loss itself. I tried to practice, to cling to what remained. I spoke incantations until my throat bled, traced sigils until my fingers cramped. But magic that had once obeyed me like a loyal dog now slunk away, defiant, refusing my call. The third consequence was suspicion. My companions noticed. They were not fools. Where once I strode at the head of the band, now I lagged. Where once I commanded attention, now I faltered. They asked no questions at first. Loyalty kept them silent, but their eyes spoke. Worry, fear, doubt. One night, by the campfire, a friend leaned close and whispered, "What did you bargain for?" I froze. I had never told them, not truly. They had suspected, of course power, like mine, does not bloom without seed. But suspicion and knowledge are not the same. I lied, clumsily, and they nodded, but their gaze lingered long after. The bond between us, once strong, began to fray. The fourth consequence was presence. Though the devil himself did not appear again, I felt him everywhere, a shadow longer than it should be, a reflection in glass, smiling when I did not, a whisper in the corner of the room, never clear, but always waiting. Sometimes I caught the faintest glimpse of horns curling in candlelight. Sometimes the flicker of a tail vanishing around a corner, always subtle, always fleeting, always enough to remind me I was watched. I began to dread mirrors. I began to avoid still water. I began to walk quickly through empty streets, though I knew running would not save me. The fifth consequence was hunger, not of the body, but of the soul. A gnawing emptiness that food did not fill, drink did not soothe, company did not ease. Something inside me ached, as though a piece had been torn away when I broke the pact, leaving only a wound that would not heal. I found myself seeking warmth, sitting too close to fires, holding candles until wax burned my skin, standing at dawn with eyes closed, begging the sun to fill the hollow. But nothing did. The hunger remained. I knew then what it was, the devil reclaiming what was his, not all at once, but slowly, savouring each piece as it was drawn away. There was one night I cannot forget. I lay awake, the camp silent around me. The stars burned above, but dim, as though veiled by ash. And then I heard it, the sound of chains dragging, faint, far away, but growing closer. I sat up, heart pounding. My companions slept undisturbed. The sound grew louder, metal scraping stone, links grinding links. I turned, and in the darkness beyond the campfire, I saw them. Shadows shaped like figures, each bound in chains that stretched into nothingness. They moved slowly, endlessly, their faces blank, their eyes hollow. I could not breathe. And then one turned toward me. Its mouth opened, but no sound came, only the hiss of fire dying in ash. I blinked, and they were gone. The night was silent again. The fire crackled, the stars shone. But I knew. I had not dreamed. From then on, I knew the truth. Breaking an oath is not a single act. It is a process, a slow unmaking, a descent, not in one step, but many. The hells do not rush, they savour. Each punishment is a reminder, each loss a lesson, each vision a promise of what is still to come. I had broken the chain, but the chain was not gone. It was wrapped tighter now, around my soul, pulling slowly, patiently, inevitably. And still a part of me clung to the ember of defiance. I told myself it was worth it, that freedom, however brief, however doomed, was better than obedience. That the silence, the loss, the visions, the hunger, all of it was the price of being mine again. I whispered to myself, in the dark. Let him come. Let the hells send their hounds. I will not bow. Brave words, foolish words, words I barely believed, for in truth I knew the hells always collect. And the sound of chains was growing closer. The silence, the loss, the visions, all of it was only the beginning. Breaking the oath is not merely rebellion, it is a crime, and crimes in the 9 hells demand punishment. Devils are not gods. They do not strike with floods or plagues. They are not beasts. They do not hunt in madness or hunger. Devils are law, and law requires enforcers. The first of them came in dreams. I dreamed of a vast plain of ash. The sky above was iron, colourless, stretching forever, and across the horizon moved a figure. At first, I thought it small a shadow, a trick of distance. But as it drew near, I saw it was enormous, a hound, blacker than void, its eyes twin coals of fire. Chains coiled around its body, each link thick as a man's arm, dragging and rattling as it walked. Its mouth opened, and the sound was not a growl, but the grinding of stone, the scream of iron against iron. It looked at me, and I woke drenched in sweat, throat raw, as though I had been screaming. The fire in the camp had burned low. The night was silent, but on the ground beside me, pressed into the earth, was a single paw print, too large for any mortal beast, still smoking. The second sign came days later. We were on the road when a crow circled above. Its wings were black, its feathers shining like obsidian. At first, nothing seemed strange, but then I realized it had no eyes, just sockets filled with glowing ember light. It circled once, twice, then perched on a branch above me, its head tilted, unnatural, as though watching with more than sight. No one else seemed to notice. My companions walked on, chatting softly, unaware. The crow cawed once a sound like chains snapping, then flew south toward the horizon. And I knew I was marked. The third sign came not as dream or omen, but in flesh. We camped that night in the ruins of an old chapel. Its walls crumbled, its roof opened to the sky. I took first watch. The night was quiet, the stars pale, and then I saw her. At first, she seemed only a traveller, a woman in crimson armour, her wings folded behind her like a cloak. She stood at the edge of the ruins, watching me. Beautiful, terrible, her eyes gleamed gold. Anarinyes. She did not speak. She did not move. She only watched, her gaze steady, patient, unblinking. I did not call to her. I did not raise alarm. I only sat in silence, heart thundering, while she watched. Hours passed. The fire burned low. The sky paled toward dawn. And then, without a sound, she was gone. But where she had stood, the grass was scorched, blackened into the shape of wings. From then on, the pursuit was constant. Not always visible, not always near, but always certain. The hound haunted my dreams, its chains rattling closer each time. The crow circled above by day, always out of reach, always watching. The Erinyes returned again and again, never striking, only standing at the edge of sight on hilltops, at crossroads, in doorways, her patience more terrifying than any attack. It was as if hell itself had decided I would not be taken quickly. I would be hunted, step by step, until the weight of dread broke me, and my companions began to suffer. The hunter's presence touched them, though they did not understand why. Food spoiled faster. Horses grew restless. Shadows lengthened unnaturally. At night, whispers woke them, voices they could not place. speaking in languages they did not know. They blamed the road, the ruins, bad luck. But I knew it was me. The hells do not strike only the Oathbreaker. They strike all around, softening the world, isolating, breaking trust. My companions grew restless, uneasy, their gazes on me sharper each day. One night, a friend whispered, "Are we cursed?" And though I did not answer, the truth was clear. The hound came closer. One night, I woke not to dreams, but to sound. Chains, real, not imagined, dragging across stone. I rose, hand trembling on my weapon. The fire was low. My companions slept. At the edge of the camp, in the dark, 2 eyes burned. Red, deep, smouldering. The hound was there. It did not move. It only watched. Its breath was the sound of bellows, hot and slow. Its chains dragged, clinking softly in the stillness. I stood frozen, my mouth dry, my heart a hammer. And then it stepped forward, 1 pace only. The earth shook beneath its paw. I staggered back, nearly crying out. The hound did not pursue. It only stared, the promise clear. Not yet, but soon. And then, as quickly as it came, it was gone. The night was silent again, but the paw print it left smouldered until dawn. I knew then that this was the truth of breaking an oath. The punishment is not only in loss, but in pursuit. You do not simply fall into hell. You are dragged, slowly, step by step, by hunters who never tire, never falter, never cease. The hells are patient, and the hound of Nessus had my scent. The hound's eyes had burned into me, and from that night forward the unravelling began in earnest. At first it was small, like thread slipping loose from a seam. A purse of coin went missing, stolen perhaps, but I never heard the thief, never saw the hand. A message I had sent never reached its destination. A tavern, where I was once welcomed, turned me away with polite excuses. The owner's smile stiff, his eyes filled with something like fear. I told myself these were accidents. Coin is stolen, messages are lost, people change. But deep inside, I knew the devil was pulling. Then the cracks widened. Merchants who once offered me goods at lowered prices now demanded triple, their voices sharp with suspicion. Nobles who once smiled at my words now turned cold, as though I had offended them gravely without knowing how. Even my companions, those few who had stood beside me on the road, began to drift. They were still kind, still polite, but their eyes no longer lingered on mine. Their laughter quieted when I approached. Their conversations hushed when I drew near. One evening, when I returned to camp late, I found them sitting close, their voices low. My name hung in the air as I entered. They looked up, startled, their faces pale. No one spoke of it, but the silence said everything. The devil's hand was not loud, not sudden. He did not strike me with lightning, did not send fire to consume my home. His vengeance was quieter, sharper, more enduring. He pulled threads. He soured fortune. He turned smiles into frowns, gold into ash, allies into strangers. It was like watching a great tapestry come undone, not torn, not burned, but carefully unravelled, strand by strand, until nothing remained but loose threads at my feet. And then came the sickness. It began as weariness, a heaviness in my limbs that no sleep relieved. My breaths grew short, my hands trembled, my vision blurred at the edges, shadows clinging where none should be. Physicians examined me, but found nothing. Priests prayed over me, but their blessings faltered, their voices uncertain. One priest, older than the rest, placed a hand on my chest, closed his eyes, and frowned. When I asked what he saw, he whispered, a chain wound tight around your soul. And then, refusing to say more, he left. Food lost its taste. Water left my throat dry. Wine, once sweet, burned bitter on my tongue. Sleep gave no rest. Waking brought no strength. And always, in the corner of my vision, I saw shadows moving, chains twisting, eyes gleaming. The Hound of Nessus was patient, but it was drawing closer. I tried to fight. I cast spells with what power remained, but they faltered, sparks dying before they struck. I sought new allies, but doors closed in my face. I prayed, desperately, not to the devil, but to any god who would listen. No one answered. The silence of the heavens was heavier than the whispers of hell. And still, the unravelling continued. The last of my coin vanished. My companions left, one by one. Some offered excuses, some nothing at all. I watched them go, unable to follow, my body too weak, my soul too heavy. I was alone, alone with only the silence, the sickness, and the certainty that every step forward was another step closer to the chains. There was one night I remember with clarity. I stumbled through the streets of a city where once I had been celebrated. Now the people turned their faces away, doors shutting at my approach. The sky above was clouded, the air thick with smoke, and in a darkened alley I fell. My knees struck stone, my hands scraped raw, my breath shallow. I looked up, and in the shadows I saw him, not the Hound, not the Erinyes, the devil himself. He stood at the far end of the alley, dressed as he had been the night I signed the contract, handsome, patient, his eyes gleaming with false warmth. "You are learning," he said softly, his voice carrying as though the alley itself bent to deliver it. "Every gift has a price, every oath a chain, and you thought to break it. I tried to speak, but no words came. My throat was dry, my chest heavy. This is only the beginning," he whispered. "Do you see how gently I unmake you, not with fury, but with patience? I strip away what I gave, and I strip away what you had before, until nothing remains but the soul I own." His smile returned, thin as a blade. "And then, when there is nothing left, I will take that too." And then he was gone. The alley was empty. The smoke hung still. My hands trembled against the stone. I could not rise. That was the truth of the descent. Not sudden ruin, not loud destruction, but slow erosion. A steady decline into emptiness, watched always by patient eyes. Fortune fades, friends leave, health rots, and in the end, you are left with only yourself and the chains waiting to claim what remains. Yet still, even then, a part of me whispered defiance. Small, broken, almost laughable but real. A spark that said, "You may strip me bare, but I am still mine." Whether that spark was courage or madness, I cannot say, but I clung to it. Even as the hells pulled harder, even as the Hound drew closer, even as the last light in my world began to fade, the line between waking and dream grew thin. At first, it was only in sleep that I saw the hells. Ash plains, rivers of fire, towers of black iron stretching higher than sight. But soon, the visions crept into waking life. A shimmer at the edge of the road, a flicker in the corner of the eye. I would blink, and the world was gone. For a heartbeat, I walked not among trees or stone streets, but upon blasted earth where nothing lived. The air stank of sulphur, thick and hot, every breath a weight. Chains lay scattered across the ground, writhing like serpents, coiling toward my feet. And then, as suddenly, I would blink again, and the world returned. But the smell lingered. The heat clung to my skin. I knew then that I was not only being hunted, I was being drawn. The first true vision came at dawn. I had dragged myself to a hilltop, hoping the sunrise might comfort me, remind me that not all light belonged to the hells. The horizon flared gold, and for a moment I felt peace. Then the light shifted. The gold deepened into red. The sky darkened. The sun hung black, burning at its edges, bleeding fire. The ground beneath me cracked, ash spilling upward like smoke. And from the fissures rose voices, countless voices, whispering in tongues too old for mortals, yet I understood every word. Promise, oath, chain, debt, pay. I staggered back, clutching my head. The whispers rose to screams, then to silence. The vision broke, but when I looked down, the grass where I had stood was blackened, charred in the shape of a chain. Each day after, the visions deepened. I saw the iron city of Dis, towers of steel, each window glowing with fire, the streets lined with souls bent in chains, overseen by pitiless wardens. The heat was unbearable, yet the people moved without complaint, as though obedience had burned thought from them. I saw the rivers of Phlegethos, molten streams, glowing red, carrying screams on their current. Souls writhed in the flow, consumed, renewed, consumed again, their torment endless, their voices mingling with the hiss of fire. I saw the pits of Nessus, endless chasms where archdevils ruled, thrones of bone and iron upon mountains of ash. Each throne was vast, each ruler cloaked in fire and shadow, their eyes burning with law, with hunger, with patience. And through it all, I heard the rattling of chains, always chains. Sometimes I saw not only places, but faces. A noble, dressed in finery, his smile sharp, his eyes hollow. I blinked, and he was gone, but the faint smell of ash lingered. A child playing in the street, her laughter sweet, her shadow twisting into horns and wings. I blinked, and she was a child again, but her gaze lingered on me too long. A beggar muttering in alleys, his words nonsense, until I leaned closer. They come, Oathbreaker, they come. The 9 hells were not only visions, they were leaking into the world around me, step by step. The worst vision came at night. I dreamed I stood on a plain of black stone, stars hidden by smoke. Before me rose a throne of iron, vast beyond comprehension. Upon it sat a figure, tall, cloaked, his face veiled in shadow, but his eyes burned. Not gold, not red, but white, cold, piercing, eyes that saw through flesh into soul. It was Asmodeus, Lord of the 9. He did not speak, he did not move, he only watched me, and in that gaze I felt every oath ever broken, every promise betrayed, every chain shattered, not just mine, but the weight of all mortal treacheries across time. I fell to my knees, unable to breathe. My skin burned, my veins froze, my heart stopped. His gaze was law, absolute and unyielding. Then, slowly, he raised a hand. A single chain slithered from the air, coiling toward me. Its links glowed with heat, yet when it touched my skin, it was colder than death. I woke screaming, and on my wrist, when dawn came, was a bruise shaped like a chain. After that, I stopped pretending. The 9 hells were not waiting for me after death. They were already here, reaching, pulling, claiming piece by piece. Every vision was a hook in my soul. Every whisper was a link in the chain. And I knew then, breaking the oath was not escape, it was exchange. I had traded one prison for another. Freedom had been a lie, a brief spark before the chains pulled tighter, but still a part of me resisted. I told myself the visions were warnings, not sentences, that if I fled far enough, prayed hard enough, fought long enough, I might yet slip their grasp. But in the silence after each vision, when the whispers faded and the world returned, I knew the truth. The 9 hells do not lose, and they had already marked me as theirs. I had wondered, often, how it would happen. Would they drag me screaming into fire? Would the hound sink its teeth into my throat, chains snapping tight as the 9 hells swallowed me whole? Would Asmodeus himself appear, hand outstretched, to claim the soul I had foolishly thought mine? In the end, it was quieter than that. It began with a knock at the door. I had taken shelter in an abandoned inn, long since stripped of furniture and warmth. The windows were broken, the walls crumbling, the hearth long cold. I sat in silence, the last of my strength fading, when I heard it. 3 slow knocks, heavy, measured. I did not rise. My legs were weak, my heart heavy, but the door opened anyway. And there she was, the Erinyes. Her armour gleamed crimson, though no light touched it. Her wings unfolded, filling the doorway. Her eyes burned gold, patient and cold. She did not draw her blade. She did not speak. She only looked at me, and in her gaze, I knew it was time. Behind her, in the shadows of the broken street, I saw them. The crow, perched on a shattered post, its ember eyes unblinking. The hound, vast and silent, its chains dragging sparks across the stones. And behind them, more shadows, figures tall and cloaked, their faces hidden, their chains coiling into the earth. The hunters had come, not in anger, not in haste, but in inevitability. I rose, slowly, my body trembling. "Is this it?" I whispered. My voice cracked, barely more than breath. The Erinyes tilted her head, expression unreadable. "The contract is broken," she said, her voice calm, like scripture recited from memory. "The debt remains. The price must be paid." I laughed then, weak, bitter, hollow. I thought I was free. She did not answer, and in that silence I understood. Devils do not bargain for freedom. They bargain for ownership, and ownership, once claimed, is never returned. The hound stepped forward. Its breath was fire, its eyes smouldering. Chains slithered from its body, dragging toward me. Slow, patient, I backed away, though there was nowhere to go. The walls pressed close, the hearth cold, the windows shattered. Chains coiled around my feet, my wrists, my chest. Cold and hot at once, heavy as stone. They did not cut, did not burn, not yet. They only held. The Erinyes stepped inside, her gaze never leaving mine. Kneel, I did not. Not at first. I stood trembling, the chains biting deeper. My breath shuddered, my heart pounded. But the weight grew heavier, heavier, until my knees buckled. I sank to the floor, and she smiled, faint, sharp. The devil himself came then. Not in fire, not in thunder, simply in presence. The air grew heavy, the shadows deepened, and he was there, as he had always been handsome, patient, his eyes burning like embers. "You defied me," he said softly, almost kindly. "And for that, I almost admire you." I tried to speak, but the chains tightened, cutting the breath from my lungs. He crouched, meeting my eyes. His smile was gentle, almost tender. "Did you think breaking the oath freed you? That the ink burned and the debt vanished? No, you broke it, and in breaking you proved yourself mine beyond question." He placed a hand against my chest. Cold fire spread through me, filling every vein. "This is not punishment," he whispered. "This is collection." The hound's chains wrapped tighter. The Erinyes lowered her gaze. The crow cawed once, sharp as steel snapping, and the world dissolved. The walls of the inn fell away. The hearth crumbled. The sky above split, and I was falling. Down, through fire and ash, through rivers of molten stone, through cities of iron and streets of screaming souls. Down, past Dis, past Phlegethos, past Cania's frozen wastes, down into the pit where law itself is fire and every word is chain, down into Nessus. I landed on black stone, the air thick with heat and smoke. Chains coiled around me, anchoring me to the ground. Above me loomed towers of iron, vast and endless, their windows glowing with fire. And at the horizon, vast beyond comprehension, was the throne I had seen in visions. The throne of Asmodeus. I could not see his face, only the shadow of his vast form, the fire of his eyes. His gaze fell upon me, and I was nothing, less than nothing. A grain of ash in a storm, a spark in an ocean of flame. The devil who had claimed me knelt at his feet, chains in hand. He bowed, presenting me like tribute. "This soul is yours, my lord." And Asmodeus spoke. His voice was not sound, but law. It was the sound of oaths binding, of promises etched in eternity. It was every contract, every chain, every betrayal given form. So it is. The chains tightened. My body broke. My breath failed. My soul burned. And yet, in the last moment, I whispered, not in defiance, not in hope, but in truth. I was mine, once. Into the restment, and then the chains pulled me into shadow. There is a quiet in hell that no hymn on the mortal earth can match. Not the quiet of mercy, the quiet of order. I hang in it now. Not from a gallows, not from a hook from law. Chains hold me in the posture of a pen stroke, an unfinished line waiting to be crossed and sealed. Time has no edges here. My breaths are counted by the clicks of links settling into links, my thoughts by the slow cooling of iron that never truly cools. It is not agony as stories love to shout it. It is inventory, an accounting of a life, debits tallied with patience, credits as thin as dust. Clerks move below me, not men in robes, but devils with styluses of bone. Their scales polished by centuries of soft scraping. They never look up, they record. Every signature I made, every command I obeyed, every moment I hesitated. My deeds become numbers, my doubt becomes clause, my hope becomes a footnote. When one clerk pauses, another continues. The work is without breath. A chained devil oversees the aisle tall, draped in his own harness of living metal. He does not speak, he taps. Each tap is a verdict struck on an anvil no one can see. You broke an oath, someone says, and only afterward do I know the voice is in me. Breaking is a kind of truth, and every truth has its price. I do not ask who speaks. The answer is already recorded in a ledger somewhere. Speaker subject, location Nessus, status collected. They are precise, the devils. Their punishments are scaffolds, not storms. And so, when the overseer finally raises a gaunt hand, the options arrive not as threats, but as forms. Form the first, the coin. A press like an altar. A mould rimmed with infernal sigils, cold fire rather than heat. A soul hammered flat until it fits. Face stamped into metal that sings in a register only the damned remember. The reward, to be useful, to be carried, to be spent. The fate, to feel every palm that holds you, every bargain you enable, every mile of Avernus skated beneath war machine wheels, while you thrum and complain and sleep and wake inside a circle the size of a thumb. Form the second, the base, the lemure, melted spirit poured into a wax body, eyes like pearls sunk in tallow. Memory drains away in long threads, commands pour in like mud. You are reborn, an obedient question mark, wandering Avernus until promotion or obliteration. There is no hunger in it, only waiting. There is no will in it, only service. Form the third, the link, not metaphor, an actual link in an actual chain, forged from sins and clauses, and that last small spark you tried to save, worn by a gaoler, or a hound, or an Erinyes with a patient gaze. You learn the weight of other souls by holding them. You learn patience by being the thing that makes patience possible. I am given time to consider, even now, courtesy. The hound of Nessus curls nearby like an eclipse made of muscle. Its chains pool across the floor like spilled script. The Erinyes who fetched me stands with arms folded, her wings half furled, expression blank as the inside of a seal. The clerks keep writing. I think of the night I signed. I think of the night I refused. The two moments are the same shape in memory, as if hell holds them up together to show how similar courage and pride can feel. Choose, the overseer says, but he does not rush me. He knows the choice was made long before ink, long before fire, long before I learned that power is a vocabulary for fear. I ask, and the politeness surprises even me, if I choose coin, will I feel the world? You will feel use, he answers. And if I choose the base, will I forget? You will forget in the right order. And the link? He does not answer. He lifts a length of chain, and every loop in it rings softly like a bell practicing. I breathe. There is air here, of a kind. From far above or far within, the light of the throne does not brighten and does not dim. It simply is. Law does not need to announce itself more than once. I remember faces, not devils, people, the rival with his bread and his daughter, my companions around a fire that did not know what sat beside it, the child I healed who looked at me with fear instead of thanks, the shopkeeper who bowed because something behind my words pressed his knees down. I said at the end, I was mine, once. It is the truest sentence I have ever spoken, and because it is true, it will be used against me until the truth wears smooth. The coin would travel, the base would dissolve, the link would hold. Which is the worst? Which is the most honest? Which carries the most chance of a stray spark finding straw? They will tell you there is no chance in hell. Do not believe them. Devils do not gamble, but mortals do, even when they are ash wearing a face. I find a small humour left in me rinsed of laughter, but still shaped like it. I have been pursued across dreams and roads by hunters who never hurry. Now they stand and wait for me to volunteer for my collar. Before I choose, I say. A question. The Erinyes tilts her head. This is permitted. What happens to those who keep their oaths? To those who serve you to the end? The overseer does not smile. Promotion. To what? To purpose. A pause. And eventually to silence. In the end, all oaths are kept. Or broken. The difference is the manner. Law as lullaby. I should hate it. I find it soothing the way a final number can soothe an anxious ledger. The hound shifts, chains whispering. The crow I saw on the road, or a memory made into a bird, perches now on a bracket above the press. It has eyes today, cut from dull gems, they do not blink. A clerk cleans the mould with a cloth that smokes but does not blacken. Patient hands, precise. He has done this 1,000,000 times and will do it 1,000,000 more, and time will not move for him because it has nowhere to go. I do not delay to win time. Time cannot be won here. I delay because even now, somewhere in me, a cheap mortal superstition hopes a god will come through the ceiling and say, enough. Lathander once touched my cheek with dawn in a field far away. Today he has business elsewhere. Timora prefers tables where dice rattle. Ilmater is busy with earthquakes that make better poetry than one man on a hook. Mistra's servants count spells, not sentences. I am alone in a room full of company. Coin, I say, not because it is kinder, because it is circulation, because a circle touches more hands than a link touches wrists, because sometimes the world is a pocket, and in a pocket you hear things, because being spent is a verb, and verbs have subjects, even when those subjects are smaller than an engraving can show. They do not nod, they do not affirm, they simply proceed. The chain lowers me, the press rises. The mould is a mouth that does not bite so much as define. Cold fire climbs my skin. It is not pain, it is resolution. The clerks recite. The words are shaped like the contract I signed, then broke, then became. Clauses peel from me like leaves. Names I wore fall away. One remains. Not mine, but mine enough. It sinks into metal while it is still spiritual, and the metal is still rhetorical. Somewhere, a bell shaped like a gavel answers. I think I will scream, I do not. The press closes the way an argument closes, with no gaps, no generosity, no cruelty. The heat does not burn, it concludes. When the mould opens, I am round. Not in a coin, weight certain to the grain, edge etched with script that can be read two ways, both true. One face shows a stylized hound. The other shows a sigil that could be a rose if you squint and have not learned all your lessons yet. I am lifted with tongs. The metal sings my voice now, thin and steady. The chain devil listens, and I recognize, with a calm that would terrify my former self, that he is listening for cracks. There are none. I am sound. The Erinyes extends a gauntlet. I feel the pattern of her palm. Souls discover their second sense here, tactile memory. Every touch is a library. I will be held by many hands. I will be traded, hoarded, lost in cushions, melted into engines. I will learn the weight of the world by being what the world weighs. She tosses me once, as if to test balance. I do not flip. That decision is no longer mine. There is another courtesy here before circulation. The offer. A last little devil's joke trimmed in real teeth. Serve, she says, as coin or as hunter. We are not uncreative. I understand. There is always a path upward if you are willing to go down to walk it. If I bid for promotion, I may become the Hound's link, the clerk's stylus, the whisper behind a signature. I might even rise from lemure to imp to bureaucrat, to advocate to something with wings and a face that looks honest in terrible ways. No, I say, and the word is light as a minted edge. Let me be spent. The hound's breath warms. The crow tilts its head. The clerks do not pause. The overseer raises his hand the way a coder raises its bow. I am placed in a purse with others like me. We lie together like seeds. Each hums a different song, a lullaby from a village burned, a tavern chorus sung off key, a battlefield prayer with mud in it. None of us can sleep. All of us remember sleeping. We do not touch except with edges, and edges are what made us. The purse closes. We move. You imagine heat, but I bring you cool news. The 9 hells can be cold, and that is worse. I feel iron floors through leather, the thump-thump of war engines that drink souls as if souls were oil. The purse opens. I am counted. I pass from claw to gauntlet, to glove to callus. I learn the difference between the grasp of a pit fiend and the pinch of an imp, and the careless clutch of a mortal who thought he was paying for passage and bought a passport. Sometimes I am under starlight that is not sky. Sometimes I am under sky that is not free. Sometimes I am lost between cushions on an infernal palanquin, while above me 2 dukes of Dis argue about whose chain is more beautiful. It is all the same motion. Use. You think now that I regret choosing the circle. Listen, regret is a hot thing, and hell teaches you to prefer the cool. I do not regret. I continue. There are mercies even here. Small ones, but small is the size of real mercy. A mortal hand once closes around me that shakes. I know at once it is a good hand that has done bad, not the other way around. He flinches at the warmth my warmth and pulls me back from the dealer's palm. He pays with silver. Later, at a shrine whose roof leaks in gentle ways, he places me on the stone and whispers, "If you are anyone, be free." It is the wrong prayer. There is no free here. There is transfer. The coin eye slides from altar to gutter, the way a sentence slides from mouth to record. But for a moment, I felt rain. I tell you this because it matters. There will be nights, on your side of the veil, when you wake and do not know why. You will hear chains if you are the sort who listens for chains. If you are not, you will hear the world moving across its own gears. Either sound is true. You will touch your bedside table and feel a coin you do not remember placing there. It will be warmer than it should be, and colder after. And when you close your fingers, you will feel a hum that is not metal and not nerve. If this happens, and if you are the sort who can begin again, do this. Take the coin to morning. Hold it up at the edge of the first light you can find. Say nothing like a curse and nothing like a bargain. Say only, "I will keep what I promise." Then spend it on bread and give the bread away. I do not promise you will save me. I do not promise you will save anyone. Salvation is a word for other rooms. But promises are heat, and heat changes metal, and I, like all things made by hands and desire, am still a little soft at the edges, if you are patient. Do not break oaths, do not sign lightly, do not call power what is only a louder form of fear. These are large instructions. Sleep prefers small ones. So sleep with this, count your breaths, and keep them. A kept thing teaches a habit. Habits are stronger than chains until chains learn the habit's name. I am carried again. The purse opens. The Hound's breath is elsewhere tonight. The Erinyes is counting different stars. The clerks are still writing. The overseer is tapping a new rhythm on a different anvil. Law does not tire, and that is its advantage over love. But love has one competence law envies. It begins without permission. I was mine, once. That sentence is not over. Not because I will be mine again, that is not how endings work here, but because there are other hands, other mornings, other little mercies, in markets where bread is still warm, and children laugh for reasons that have nothing to do with contracts. The purse closes. The dark around me is clean and cool. Far away, above all roofs, a sun I cannot see draws a line across a horizon I cannot name. Somewhere, a clerk stops to sip water. Somewhere a mortal wakes and chooses not to lie. Somewhere a promise, small as a button, is kept. Listen, do you hear it? The faintest ring, a coin turned between fingers. Not a signal, a reminder, the sound of use that is not cruelty. It is an ordinary sound. Sleep has been built on less. Close your eyes. If the dark feels heavy, call it order. If it feels light, call it mercy. If it feels like both, you have learned something hell could not take. I go on. That is all. That is enough.